So, folks, this will be put up first. I've made a long 30-minute video on Harry Miller, and I'll probably put it up. I don't know whether you should read it or not. It's extremely difficult. It's just come to my attention, and I want you to know. So we'll see what it says on Wikipedia here about him. An ex-police officer has won a legal challenge against a national policy for forces to record gender-critical views as a non-hate crime. Hate incidents. Humberside Police visited Harry Miller in January 2020 after a complaint over an alleged transphobic tweet he made. He was recorded on the national database as a non-hate crime incident. So the BBC here has something about it. We'll see what they say. This is him here. Next policeman. See, this proves it's not right to be criticising professional people who live and work and retire and everything else. They are just as aghast at what's going on as we are. An ex-police officer has won a legal challenge against a national policy for forces to record gender-critical views as a non-crime hate incident. Non-crime hate incident. Humberside Police visited Harry Miller in 2020 after a complaint over alleged transphobic tweets he made. It was recorded on a national database as a non-crime hate incident. So this is what they're doing. They will work in Ireland to identify Enoch Burke before he ever gets appointed to be a teacher. This is what they're wearing round to. This is what the hate crime is. Along with the hate crime will be new guidelines for the Gardaí to watch everything he says on social media. And you could get a person who might want to become a publican or a betting license, and they'll object on the grounds that he tweeted such a thing. Do you get what I'm saying? Or he might want a bookmaker's license, or he might want to go for a job, or he might want to sit on a jury, and the police will vet him on his tweets and his stuff, and they'll object to him. The criminals will be given the fact that he posted pro law and order comments, and they'll object to him. This is what they're building round to. This is what the Irish government that we have at the moment and Sinn Féin all supports in Ireland. And this is what they're working towards, to get everything online so that they can only have their own woke people making all the decisions. It could apply in applying for a gun license. It could apply for anything. Okay, and eventually they could bring it round to the farmer, because although there are no real permits needed yet, they will eventually give you permits for certain things, and they'll be able to control every aspect of your life. So now, he made what they call transphobic tweets. It was recorded on national database as a non-hate crime incident, a non-crime hate incident. But the Court of Appeal ruled on Monday the guidance was wrongly used, and it had a chilling effect on Mr. Miller's right to freedom of speech. Speaking outside the court, Mr. Miller from Lincolnshire said being effective was not one of the cornerstones of freedom. Being offensive. Now, just to tell you again, sometimes I make little errors. He said outside the court, being offensive was one of the cornerstones of freedom. So I'm entitled to be offensive toward Roderick O'Gorman. I'm not actually against gay people. Would you believe that, in their ordinary way? But once they start dictating what happens to children in school, I get the hackles up and I come down on them like a ton of bricks, and all of these crowd. And so this would be deliberately getting at me. I have no doubt there could already be a database. I must write and see. But for now, anyway, this is something we must deal with, right? So he said, being offensive, you have to put up with it. That's what satire is. That's what Hall's Pictorial Weekly was. They used to be so offensive towards Richie Ruan, the Labour minister back during the hard times of the 70s, that people wouldn't vote for him anymore. But that's life. So anyway, so being offensive was one of the cornerstones of freedom. Being offensive is not, cannot, and should not be an offence, he said. No, I'm entitled to say that old idiot up there. Put up with it. Only when speech turns to malicious communication or targeted harassment against an individual should it be a problem. So this is what he said after winning his case. And I agree with that. He says, not right that we should target maybe a young black lad walking home from secondary school, and we make comments about him. I'm not in favour of that at all. So you see, these idiots of police are not able to draw that distinction. A hate incident is any non-crime incident which is perceived by the victim or any other person to be motivated by hostility or prejudice, according to the College of Policing guidance on hate crime. The Court of Appeal said national rules by the College of Policing had placed too much emphasis on the perception of transphobic hostility, despite no evidence recorded by the police. Dame Victoria Sharp, one of England's most senior judges, the net said the net for non-crime hate speech is exceptionally wide. It's an exceptionally wide one, which is designed to capture speech, which is perceived to be motivated by hostility, regardless of whether there is evidence that the speech was motivated by such hostility. It's also thought, it's more than speech. The volume of non-hate crime speech is enormous, and the police do not have the resources or the capacity to investigate all complaints that are made. So what she says is, if there was 1 in 100, they don't have the resources, so they just block everybody, irrespective of whether they're actually hateful or not. There is nothing in the guidance about excluding irrational complaints, including those where there is no evidence of hostility or little, if anything, to address the chilling effects which it may have on the legitimate exercise of freedom of expression. At last we got a judge with some tither of wit. Mr. Miller challenged Humberside Police actions at the High Court, which ruled in February 2020 that the force's response was unlawful and disproportionate interference with Mr. Miller's right to freedom of expression. Today's ruling backs Harry Miller's legal right to speak his mind and potentially cause offence, a freedom that he says is fundamental in the battle of ideas in a democratic society. His victory is a headache for the College of Policing, which now has to come up with new safeguards. They need to be chucked out on the road. And why did the British government not move in on this? Why is the Irish one doing it? Isn't it terrible that judges has to do it? The victory is a headache for the college, which now has to come up with new safeguards to ensure that any future recording of non-hate crime incidents does not disproportionately interfere with the legal rights to speak one's mind. And they need only one way you'll fix them. This means rethinking guidance that dates back to the fallout of the 1993 racist murder of Stephen Lawrence. There was a murder of Stephen Lawrence. Certainly. And there was people captured for it. This has nothing to do with that. Mr. Miller says it is obvious back then, when the police should have been recording genuinely hateful gestures that were prelude to awful crimes. He urged them today to remember that lesson and to focus on rooting out hate speech rather than taking it upon themselves to police provocative thought and debate. Well, we'll see how that goes. This is all to be fought for in the democratic process in Ireland anyway. However, an additional challenge to the lawfulness of the College of Policing guidelines was dismissed, with the High Court finding that it serves legitimate purposes and is not disproportionate. So, other challenges he didn't win. Mr. Miller's lawyers then took the case to the Court of Appeal, saying the guidance unlawfully violates the right to freedom of expression. The College of Policing said any interference with freedom of expression was proportionate to the legitimate aims pursued by the guidance. The court heard the guidance had been revised with updates, including a strong warning against police taking disproportionate response to reports of non-crime hate incident. However, Dame Victoria added, in my opinion, the revisions do not go far enough and not nearly far enough to address the chilling effect of perception-based recorded crime generally. More stories from Mr. Miller posted a number of tweets between 2018 and 2019 about the transgender issues as part of a debate about forming a Gender Recognition Act 2004. In one tweet, Mr. Miller wrote, I was assigned mammal at birth, but my orientation is fish. Don't miss species me. This tweet was among several others which were reported to Humberside Police as being allegedly transphobic, and Mr. Miller was visited by officers at his workplace. And here's a picture of him here again. After Monday's Court of Appeal ruling, Assistant Chief Constable Ian Raffle from College of Policing said the balance we have always aimed to strike is between the need to protect vulnerable people. Vulnerable people. We have radical government making the laws for me on my farm, and communities from harm, with the need to facilitate the protected freedom of speech. They're not capable of understanding the distinctions in this ruling. The court has found we need to make safeguards in our guidance more explicit to help police officers purportedly enforce the law. They are not entitled to enforce a law that doesn't exist. Humberside Police said it would always follow the college policing guidance. So have they said now they're not going to pay any heed to it? It would always follow. I don't know what that means. Now, like everything else, folks, it's hard to get around all this stuff. Essentially, he won his case. He won his case. We have a right to freedom of expression, and we need it more. It's in the Constitution, and we will have to fight for it. We'll not get it handed to us. And how many people have had this abuse fared on them? How many people have been denied jobs as teachers and everything else? And policemen even. If he would not be allowed into the police today in England. How many people have? Because they don't have the resources to go to court. That's what government's job is. And the British government, under that communist Keir Starmer, will be very upset at this. They will try to beat this if they can. And that's what you have voted for in the UK, folks, when you vote for Labour. But I can't do anything about that. As regarding Ireland, we got to work, we got to manage this. This is a country where they jailed postmistresses for stealing money from the post office when they were perfectly innocent. Talk about a mess. Okay, folks, comment underneath. We'll see you back for something soon. Thank you.